3 nights before her daughter's wedding, Lorraine couldn't sleep. Something about the groom unsettled her spirit. So, wrapped in silence and shadows, she followed him through the empty streets of their South Carolina town, down roads where streetlights flickered and died, toward a place no mother should ever have to go. What she witnessed in that abandoned church would shatter everything she believed about love, family, and the lengths people go to protect their secrets. Her daughter's wedding was not a celebration. It was a trap. And the man Jasmine loved was not who he claimed to be. This is what happens when a mother's instinct battles against a daughter's blind devotion. When love becomes a weapon. When trust is the deadliest currency of all. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. This is a story about instinct, that primal force that makes mothers wake in the middle of the night with their hearts racing, knowing something is wrong before logic catches up. It happened in Charleston, South Carolina, in a neighborhood where everyone knew everyone, where secrets were supposed to stay buried beneath generations of good manners and Sunday services. Who was this man who swept Jasmine off her feet with his smooth words and designer suits? Why did his past seem so carefully curated, so perfectly blank? And why did Lorraine's grandmother's warnings echo louder with each passing day? When a man's story is too clean, baby girl, it's because he scrubbed away the truth. The invitations had been sent. The venue was paid for. The dress hung in Jasmine's closet. But Lorraine had started noticing things. Small things. The way he never answered his phone in front of them. The way he flinched when Jasmine's cousin, who worked in the DA's office, walked into the room. Some call it paranoia. Mothers call it survival. Jasmine was 28 when she met Darnell at a fundraiser for the local youth center. She was the assistant director there, pouring her heart into kids who needed someone to believe in them. He was a consultant, he said, helping nonprofits maximize their impact. His business card was thick, expensive. His handshake was confident. His interest in her work seemed genuine. Lorraine had raised Jasmine alone after her father passed when she was 12. They were more than mother and daughter. They were survival partners, dream sharers, each other's fierce protectors. Lorraine worked double shifts as a surgical nurse to put Jasmine through college. Jasmine graduated with honors and came right back to the neighborhood, determined to give back. She was brilliant, beautiful, and too trusting for her own good. When Darnell started coming around, Lorraine wanted to be happy. She wanted to see her daughter glowing, planning a future, talking about children and growing old together. And Jasmine did glow. She lit up rooms when he entered. She laughed more. She dreamed bigger. But Lorraine noticed the gaps. Darnell never talked about his family. He said they were estranged, that his childhood was complicated, that he preferred to focus on the future rather than the past. When Jasmine pressed him, he'd kiss her forehead and change the subject so smoothly that she forgot she'd even asked. He had no close friends from college. No childhood buddies. No old photos on social media. His Instagram went back exactly 2 years. His LinkedIn profile was polished but vague. Lorraine tried to tell herself she was being overprotective. That she was projecting her own fears onto her daughter's happiness. That not everyone had a photo album going back to kindergarten. But her grandmother's voice wouldn't quiet down. And then, 6 months into the relationship, Darnell proposed. It was elaborate, public, at the very youth center where they'd met. He rented out the gymnasium, filled it with flowers, brought in a string quartet. How could Jasmine say no? The wedding planning began immediately. Darnell insisted on paying for everything, waving away Lorraine's protests. His money seemed endless. The venue he chose was a historic plantation converted into an event space, the kind of place that made Lorraine's skin crawl but that Jasmine saw as romantic. He hired the best caterers, the most sought-after photographer, a wedding planner whose services usually required a year-long waitlist. Lorraine began to research. Quietly. She told herself she was just being thorough, just making sure her daughter was safe. She found nothing. Darnell's company existed, but its client list was private. His references checked out, but they all sounded rehearsed, like they were reading from scripts. His address led to a luxury apartment building where the doorman wouldn't answer questions. Then 2 weeks before the wedding she saw him. It was late, past midnight, and she'd been coming home from a shift at the hospital. She took a wrong turn trying to avoid construction and found herself on a street she didn't recognize. And there he was, Darnell, standing outside a boarded-up church in the roughest part of town, talking to 3 men whose faces she couldn't see. The way they stood, the way they moved, the way Darnell handed over an envelope thick with something, it made her blood run cold. She didn't confront him. Not yet. But she started watching more carefully. And 3 nights before the wedding, when everyone else was asleep, she saw him leave Jasmine's apartment at 2 in the morning. She grabbed her keys and followed. The streets were empty as Lorraine trailed Darnell's car through Charleston, keeping her headlights off, praying she wouldn't lose him at a stoplight. He drove with purpose, taking turns without hesitation, heading toward the industrial district where abandoned warehouses stood like tombstones against the night sky. He parked outside that same church she'd seen him at weeks before. Old Bethel AME, a building that had been condemned after a fire 10 years ago, its windows boarded up, its doors chained. But Darnell had a key. He slipped inside through a side entrance that looked like it hadn't been used in decades. Lorraine waited 5 minutes, her hands shaking on the steering wheel before she got out of her car. Every instinct screamed at her to call the police, to call Jasmine, to turn around and pretend she'd never seen this. But she couldn't. She'd come this far. She needed to know. The door he'd used was slightly ajar. She pushed it open, wincing at the creak, and stepped into darkness that smelled of smoke and mildew and something else, something chemical that made her eyes water. She could hear voices coming from deeper in the building, see light flickering from what must have been the old sanctuary. She moved slowly, carefully, her nurse's shoes silent on the debris-covered floor. The voices grew clearer. Darnell's voice and others. Men and women. A lot of them. She reached the sanctuary doors and peered through a gap where the wood had rotted away. What she saw made her legs go weak. 20, maybe 30 people, sitting in the burned pews, all of them looking at Darnell like he was preaching a sermon. But this was no church service. On the floor in front of him were photographs. Large photographs, blown up and mounted on boards. And every single one was of Jasmine. Jasmine at work. Jasmine at the grocery store. Jasmine in her apartment, through her window. Jasmine sleeping. Someone had been watching her daughter for months, documenting her every move, and Darnell was presenting these images like they were trophies. His voice carried through the ruined space, calm and professional. The timeline is set. 72 hours from now we'll have everything we need. The accounts will be accessible, the properties will be signed over, and by the time anyone realizes what's happened, we'll be gone. A woman's voice responded. And the girl? What happens to her? Lorraine recognized that voice. It belonged to the wedding planner, the woman Jasmine had been working with for months, the woman who'd become almost a friend. Darnell's response was cold. The girl is a means to an end. Her mother has the medical connections we need. The youth center has the community access. Once the marriage is legal, we'll have leverage over both. She cooperates, she lives. If she doesn't, well, people disappear every day. Lorraine's hand flew to her mouth to stop the scream. This wasn't about love. This was about money, about access, about using her daughter as a key to unlock something terrible. And all these people, all these smiling faces at wedding showers and engagement parties, they were all in on it. If you're still watching, comment, "I'm watching till the end." Let's see how many mothers' hearts would do the same. She backed away from the door, her mind racing. She had to tell Jasmine. She had to call the police. But what proof did she have? Photos through a hole in a door? A conversation she wasn't supposed to hear? Darnell had been building this con for months, creating an image of legitimacy that would be hard to dismantle in 72 hours. As she turned to leave, her foot caught on something. A piece of charred wood that clattered across the floor like thunder in the silence. The voices stopped. Footsteps started moving toward her. Lorraine ran. She made it to her car, her hands fumbling with the keys, the engine roaring to life just as the church door burst open. She saw Darnell in her rearview mirror, saw him recognize her car, saw his expression change from confusion to cold calculation. She drove, running red lights, taking random turns, not stopping until she was back in her own driveway with the doors locked and her phone in her shaking hands. But who could she call? The police? And tell them what? That her daughter's fiancé was having secret meetings? That sounded like the paranoid ravings of an overprotective mother. She had no proof, no evidence beyond her own terror. And if she went to the police without something concrete, Darnell would know. He'd disappear, or worse, he'd accelerate whatever plan he had in motion. She called Jasmine instead. It was 3 in the morning, but her daughter answered on the second ring, her voice thick with sleep and worry. "Mama? What's wrong? Are you okay?" Lorraine's voice broke. "Baby, I need you to listen to me. I need you to really hear what I'm about to say. Mama, you're scaring me. What happened? How do you tell your daughter that the man she loves, the man she's about to marry, is a monster? How do you break her heart to save her life?" Lorraine chose her words carefully, knowing that if she pushed too hard, Jasmine would defend him. She told her about following Darnell, about the church, about the photographs and the conversation she'd overheard. The silence on the other end of the line lasted forever. When Jasmine finally spoke, her voice was small and confused. "Mama, that doesn't make sense. Darnell is good. He's kind. He loves me. Why would he?" "I know what I heard, Jasmine. I know what I saw. You need to trust me on this." But Jasmine was crying now, the sound of it tearing through Lorraine's chest like broken glass. "You've never liked him. You've been looking for reasons to sabotage this from the beginning. I can't believe you would make up something so horrible just to stop me from being happy. I'm not making this up. Baby, please, you have to believe me. We need to call off the wedding. We need to." Jasmine hung up. When Lorraine tried calling back, it went straight to voicemail. She tried texting, but the messages showed as undelivered. Her daughter had blocked her. Lorraine spent the rest of the night pacing her living room, her mind spinning through options. She could go to Jasmine's apartment, force her to listen. But Darnell was probably already there, already spinning his own version of events, painting Lorraine as unstable, jealous, delusional. She could try to find evidence, but she had no idea where to start, and the wedding was now less than 3 days away. As dawn broke, her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered, her voice hoarse from crying. "Hello? Lorraine." Darnell's voice was calm, almost friendly. "I think we need to have a conversation." Her blood turned to ice. "Stay away from my daughter. I'm afraid that's not going to happen. You see, Jasmine and I are getting married. And you're going to be there, smiling, supportive, everything a mother should be. Because if you're not, if you try to interfere again, I will make sure that everyone you love suffers. Starting with Jasmine. You don't scare me. I should. You saw something you weren't supposed to see. That puts you in a very dangerous position. But I'm willing to forget about it, willing to let you live your life as long as you stay quiet and stay out of my way. Think about it. Your daughter is happy. She's in love. Who are you to take that away from her?" The line went dead. Lorraine sat in the silence, her mind racing. He was right about one thing. Jasmine wouldn't believe her without proof. And if she kept pushing, she'd only drive her daughter closer to him, make herself look like the villain in this story. She needed help. Professional help. She called her cousin Raymond, who'd retired from the FBI 5 years ago. She told him everything, sent him photos of the church, gave him Darnell's full name and what little information she had. Raymond called her back 6 hours later. His voice was grave. "Lorraine, you need to listen carefully. The man calling himself Darnell Hayes doesn't exist. That's a manufactured identity. I ran everything you gave me and it's all fake. Good fake, expensive fake, but fake. Whoever this guy really is, he's got resources and experience. This isn't his first time. Can you prove it? Can you find something I can show Jasmine? I'm trying, but people who can build identities this clean know how to bury their tracks. I need more time. The wedding is in 2 days. Then you need to find a way to delay it. Because if that marriage happens, if he gets legal access to her life, this is going to get a lot worse before it gets better." Lorraine spent the next day driving herself half mad with research, calling every contact she had, pulling strings she didn't know existed. And then, buried in an old newspaper archive Raymond had sent her, she found it. A photograph from 8 years ago from a small town in Georgia. A man who looked exactly like Darnell, but going by a different name, Christopher Allen. He'd been arrested for fraud, for running a romance scheme that had bilked 3 women out of their life savings. But the charges had been dropped due to lack of evidence, the victims too ashamed or intimidated to testify. Lorraine printed everything. She put it in a folder with her own photographs from the church, with Raymond's findings, with a timeline that showed how carefully this had all been orchestrated. And then she drove to Jasmine's apartment, praying her daughter would open the door. Jasmine answered, her eyes red and swollen. "Mama, I can't do this right now. Just look at this. Please. 5 minutes, and if you still want me to leave, I'll go." Something in Lorraine's voice must have broken through, because Jasmine stepped aside and let her in. They sat at the kitchen table and Lorraine laid out everything, piece by piece, building the case like she was presenting evidence in a trial. The fake identity. The other women. The pattern of manipulation and theft. The photographs from the church. Jasmine's hands trembled as she looked through the papers. "This can't be real. This has to be a mistake. I wish it was, baby. I wish I was wrong about all of this. But I'm not. And tomorrow, you're supposed to marry a man who doesn't even exist." Tears streamed down Jasmine's face, but she was reading now, really reading, her brilliant mind connecting dots she'd been too in love to see before. The wedding planner. He recommended her. And the photographer. And the venue manager. She looked up at her mother, horror dawning in her eyes. They're all part of it. This whole thing has been a setup from the beginning. Lorraine reached across the table and took her daughter's hands. What do you want to do? Jasmine was quiet for a long time, her face cycling through emotions. Grief, rage, fear, determination. When she finally spoke, her voice was steel. I want to destroy him. Baby, we need to call the police. Let them handle this. And tell them what? That my fiancé might be a con artist? They'll say it's a civil matter, that we need proof of a crime. By the time they investigate, he'll be gone. She stood up, pacing now, her mind clearly working through a plan. But what if we catch him in the act? What if we give him exactly what he wants and document everything? Jasmine, that's too dangerous. These people are serious. Jasmine turned to face her mother. But I'm not alone, Mama. I have you. And if we do this right, we can stop him from doing this to anyone else. The plan was simple but terrifying. Jasmine would go through with the wedding day as planned, pretending she knew nothing. During the ceremony, before vows were exchanged, she would confront him publicly, forcing him to either confess or implicate himself. It was risky. It was dangerous. It could go wrong in 1,000 ways. But it was the only shot they had. What would you have done if you were in Lorraine's shoes? Would you risk everything to save your daughter? Let us know in the comments. The wedding day arrived with perfect weather, blue skies and gentle breezes, as if the universe had no idea what was about to unfold. Lorraine helped Jasmine into her dress, both of them silent, both of them wearing masks of calm over hearts that beat like war drums. The venue was packed. 200 guests who had no idea they were about to witness something other than a wedding. Darnell stood at the altar in his perfectly tailored suit, his smile confident, his eyes scanning the crowd like a predator counting his prey. Lorraine took her seat in the front row, her phone hidden in her purse. Raymond sat 2 rows back, his hand resting on something concealed beneath his jacket. The wedding planner moved through the crowd, and Lorraine could see it now, the way she was positioning people, controlling sight lines, managing exits. This wasn't event planning. This was tactical coordination. The music started. Jasmine appeared at the back of the aisle, and for a moment, Lorraine's heart broke all over again. Her daughter looked beautiful, radiant even, and this should have been the happiest day of her life. Instead, it was a battlefield. Jasmine walked down the aisle alone as she'd insisted. No one to give her away because she belonged to herself. When she reached Darnell, he took her hands and Lorraine could see the triumph in his eyes. He thought he'd won. The officiant began the ceremony, his voice echoing through the space. We are gathered here today. The familiar words, the ritual that should have been sacred. Lorraine's hands clenched in her lap. And then, just before the vows, Jasmine spoke. Her voice was clear, strong, carrying to every corner of the room. Before we go any further, I have something to say. Something everyone here needs to hear. Darnell's expression flickered just for a second. Baby, what are you doing? My name is Jasmine Mitchell. I'm 28 years old. I work at the Riverside Youth Center. My mother is Lorraine Mitchell, a surgical nurse. We live in Charleston. We have friends, family, a whole community that loves us. She paused, letting the words settle. But you already knew all of that, didn't you? You've known it for months. You've been watching me, studying me, building a profile so you could figure out how to use me. The crowd stirred, confused murmurs rippling through the guests. Darnell's smile stayed frozen on his face, but his eyes had gone cold. Jasmine, you're not making sense. Are you feeling okay? I'm feeling clear for the first time in a year. She turned to address the crowd. This man's name isn't Darnell Hayes. That identity was created 2 years ago. Before that, he was Christopher Allen, arrested for fraud in Georgia. Before that, probably someone else. This wedding, this whole relationship has been a con. And almost everyone involved in planning it has been part of his crew. The wedding planner moved toward the door, but Raymond stepped in front of her, shaking his head. Other guests started pulling out their phones. Darnell's mask finally cracked. The charm fell away, replaced by something reptilian and calculating. You think you're clever? You think this little performance changes anything? You have no proof. This is all speculation, the paranoid ravings of a woman with cold feet and an overprotective mother. Actually, said a voice from the back of the room, we have plenty of proof. What happened next felt surreal. Darnell tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. The wedding planner and 2 of the groomsmen too, but they were outnumbered by the men in the building. They called the police and Darnell alongside others were all arrested. As they led Darnell away, he looked back at Jasmine one last time. There was no remorse in his eyes, no shame. Just calculation, already working on his next angle, his next escape. But he'd made one critical mistake. He'd underestimated a mother's love and a daughter's courage. The legal proceedings took months. Darnell, they never did find out his real name, was convicted on multiple counts and sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. 6 members of his crew took plea deals and testified against him. The wedding planner turned out to be his sister, who got 15 years of her own. Jasmine went back to work at the youth center, but with a new mission. Teaching young people about emotional manipulation, about how to recognize when someone is too good to be true. She turned her pain into purpose, her heartbreak into a shield for others. Lorraine went back to her nursing shifts, but something had changed. She'd always been strong, but now she carried herself differently, with the quiet confidence of someone who'd faced down evil and won. Mothers in the neighborhood started coming to her with their worries, their suspicions about daughters' boyfriends or sons' new friends. She listened to every one of them because she knew, instinct isn't paranoia. It's survival. 6 months later, one evening, Lorraine stood beside her daughter, thinking about all the women who hadn't been as lucky. All the mothers who'd ignored their instincts or whose daughters hadn't listened in time. She thought about how close they'd come to disaster, how one decision to follow him that night had changed everything. Sometimes protection looks like saying the hard thing, the thing your child doesn't want to hear. Sometimes love looks like trust working in both directions. A daughter trusting her mother's wisdom, a mother trusting her daughter's strength. Sometimes salvation comes not from a hero in shining armor but from 2 women who refuse to let fear silence them. So we want to hear from you. What would you have done if you were Lorraine? Would you have followed him that night, knowing it might destroy your relationship with your daughter? Or would you have let it go, hoping for the best? And if you were Jasmine, would you have listened to your mother, or would you have needed to learn the hard way? Drop your answers in the comments below. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it, someone who's been told they're too protective, too suspicious, too worried. Because sometimes being too worried is what saves a life. Hit that like button if this story moved you. Subscribe so you never miss our next true story. And remember, when something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't. Trust yourself. Protect each other. And never apologize for listening to that voice inside that tells you something's wrong.